Welcome to Measuring Success Right, the official podcast of the Marriott Student Review, a podcast for students by students, where we connect the leaders of tomorrow with the issues of today.
Hello, welcome back to Marriott Student Review podcast, Measuring Success Right. I'm your host, Dalton Hawkins.
And my name is Hunter Hawkins, one of your other hosts.
And today we're here with Kendall Castellaw, co-president of the Finance Society at BYU. Kendall, how are you doing today?
Hi guys, I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Dalton Hunter, for having me. I'm stoked to be with you guys today.
We're excited to have you. Today we have a couple of questions for you. We'd love to get to know you. I'm sure all of our listeners would love to get to know you, as well as hear some of the thoughts that you have on the Marriott School of Business mission as well as values. So just getting started, Kendall, tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a junior in the finance program here at BYU. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, about 20 minutes outside the city in Northern Virginia, and I came to BYU as a super gung-ho, eager freshman, and decided to apply to the finance program after my freshman year. Right from the get-go, I had an older brother in the program. I had a couple of friends that were in the finance program, and they were all like my biggest role models, so I knew that I wanted to follow in their footsteps and just like instantly settled at home in the Marriott School and in the Tanner building and just found a lot of community there. I had 3 older siblings that went to BYU. They're all my best friends. I love them. And yeah, I've just been really blessed to spend 3 years at BYU. Love my experience here. I've been fortunate enough to spend some time in the Finance Society as well. Happy to elaborate on that a little more, but I started in the Finance Society just as a gung-ho freshman, found a lot of community there, some of my best friends, and then came on as a VP of the association and later became the co-president just last semester. I've absolutely loved that experience so far. So really blessed to be here and excited to talk a little bit more about the role.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that introduction, Kendall.
I had a quick question, too. One thing I wanted to ask is I also kind of was a gung-ho freshman and wanted to explore some of the different majors at the business school, and finance was one of them when I started. I ended up just doing a minor in information systems, but when I started, the finance program was super intimidating. And you said it was, super welcoming and great, and I just wanted to hear your experience. How was it when you first started? Was it intimidating, especially as a woman, just because sometimes it feels a little bro-y to me? There's a lot of guys excited about finance, which is great, but sometimes I've heard it's a little harder for the women to get involved.
Yeah, of course. So you're definitely right. The finance program is definitely male-dominated, and coming as a freshman, especially a female freshman, sometimes was not the easiest thing. And I would say when you look at the finance program or the finance Society on paper, it is really intimidating. If you're just to take a glance at some of the classrooms or some of the rooms or some of the quotas, I was intimidated. But I think it's the people that made the difference and kind of filled that chasm. And so I have a story. So when it was my second week at BYU, I was a freshman, and I saw an advertisement for a BYU real estate case competition, which is one of the Finance Society sub-associations. And I had never taken a finance class, never taken an accounting class, but I knew that I wanted to get involved. So I texted one of the VPs of the association who listed their number on the ad, and I said, hey, I want to get involved. I want to be a part of this. And even though I was crazy intimidated and I knew I didn't know anything, it was the kind response and just the people and the community that surrounded me after that initial reach out that made it so much less intimidating. And so walking into the rooms and just chatting with the people, that's what makes the difference is just the community and the actual people. Because it's crazy intimidating, but as soon as you get to know the bros, as soon as you get to know the leaders, the Finance Society puts really good Christ-like, loving, kind people in leadership, and it's getting to know them and the community of people that makes the difference and kind of takes down that intimidation factor a little bit.
Perfect. I love that. It's so awesome that you had a really good experience at first, because I could see that, your whole trajectory could be different if you had a bad experience at first and you ended up doing something else.
100%. Yeah.
Super good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to learn more about just your role as co-president of the Finance Society. How has being co-president of the Finance Society influenced your perspective about, the Marriott School's different missions, goals, values, and really what it does to help students achieve greatness?
Yeah, of course. So when I think about the Marriott School vision, mission, and values, I think mostly of the mission and the focus that the business school places on transforming the world through Christ-like leadership. And I remember when I was coming into the role, I thought a lot about that mission and how I felt throughout my classes as freshman and as a sophomore and as a pre-business student, we were given all the tools to learn how to become a Christ-like leader. And when I was asked to be the president, I was okay, shoot, I'm actually supposed to be the Christ-like leader now and actually serve in a Christ-like way. and that was super intimidating to me. But I can truly say in like the 2 semesters I've been in the role, like I've been able to see how the skills that I felt like the Marriott School and the mentors, the professors, the people here really like built me up to be able to fulfill that role. And I would say, like, since being in the role now, I could see that kind of in like 2 main facets, and that's one, having the opportunity and the platform to share my testimony of Christ and instill that love of Christ in others. And then second is loving individuals the way that I feel like Christ did. And so as Finance Society co-president, I had the opportunity to teach a lot, whether it's underclassmen academy or mock interviewing or reviewing people's resumes or talking about my internship experience. And I would say, like, the first thing I say whenever I meet with a student is the concept that Christ carries us places that we can't go alone. And I think that's something that I learned in my own recruiting process and, like, my own journey through the finance program. And I'll preface by saying, like, finance, generally speaking, is, like, a pretty rigorous field, right? It's competitive, it's technical, recruiting is really hard. It was probably some of, like, the hardest weeks of my life. But when people ask me, like, how did you get through those interviews? How did you prepare? How did you balance classes? I tell them that, like, it wasn't me, like, it was Christ. It was me leaning on Christ. And, like, I think about, like, these 2 weeks I had when I was recruiting as a sophomore for an internship, and I would wake up every morning. I would play hymns on the way to the tanner at, like, 6 in the morning, because I was the first one in the tanner. I would interview. I would go to my classes. I would come home. I would do homework. I'd read the Book of Mormon. I'd prepare a little more for interviews the next day, and then I would say a prayer and I'd go to bed. And I think, like, truly some of the success, or, like, honestly, all of the success I've seen as, like, in finance has been, like, leaning on Christ. And then as the Finance Society co-president, I've been able to, like, teach that to people and tell people about that, and just, like, use my own example, hopefully as an example to them, to instill that, like, reliance on Christ. So that was the first part, is just sharing my own testimony of Christ. And then the second part, I would say, is learning to love people the way that Christ did. And I think the Marriott School has a really special component of teaching individuals to love everyone, regardless of background or perspective or opinion or religion or race or whatever it may be. And I've really been able to, like, see that in a leadership position. When I meet with students, the Finance Society is open to everyone, pre-business, upperclassmen, women, males, whatever it may be, like econ majors, finance majors, whatever it may be, the Finance Society is open to everyone. And being able to welcome people with open arms as a Finance Society co-president is something I know I was taught from the Marriott School, and just, like, the different professors, Dean Madrian, the different role models I've had. I pray over the Finance Society members every day. When I, like, get up in front of a room and I lead them, I have, like, the Spirit of Christ with me, and I think that's, like, made the biggest difference being a leader, and has, like, really changed perspective of, like, how Christ loves us. And I know Christ's love for us is, like, totally unimaginable to anything we can comprehend, but I've been able to see, like, a little glimpse of that as I, like, love all of the pre-finance and all of the Marriott School members, being able to, like, love them the way that I know Christ loves them and just help serve them.
Thanks so much for your thoughts on that, Kendall. You're a really big example and great leader in the BYU community, and the Finance Societies and the finance program is very lucky to have you.
I really love you kind of explaining first kind of the routine and spirituality aspect of your intense, rigorous weeks, because I think a lot of people forget about the religious aspects of their lives when really hard things hit, at least for me. Like, when I have really rigorous times for work and school, usually the first thing to go out of my schedule is scripture study, just because it's something that I usually put off, and then it just keeps getting put off, and that's a bad habit. And I think that's good that you kind of highlighted to show that even though you could have spent those 15 minutes reading your scriptures, you could have been doing something like preparing for your interviews. The scriptures is something that's going to be way more important. Kind of a follow-up question with that, what would you say to individuals who are doing this type of routine, that are kind of hitting all aspects of their life really, really well, but still just not quite getting the job, or they're not getting into the program or doing that? What kind of advice or hope would you give to these people that feel like they're doing everything right, but they just can't quite achieve their goals?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. I feel like the way I painted it made it sound like maybe it was, like, pretty simple, cut and clear of, like, you read your scriptures, you pray, you listen to hymns, and you're good to go, right? Like, you'll get the internship, you'll get the dream job, and, like, I can obviously attest, like, it's just not that way. And I know a lot of students can relate to that, and I would just say, like, this is so much easier said than done, but just, like, truly having, like, trust in God's plan and trust that He has, like, so much goodness in store for you. I've, like, gotten, like, rejected from, like, plenty of internships have like bombed my fair share of interviews, and like every time I've left feeling like I read my scriptures last night, like why didn't I do well in that interview? But it's just really having faith that like God places the things in your life that like are meant for you, and he'll never take anything away without having something better in store for you if you're putting in the work, if you're working hard, if you're relying on him, if you're trusting in him. And I just think above all is just having faith that like everything works out the way it's supposed to. And you talk to any professional, like even outside of our faith, whenever like I met with a professional, I'd always ask them at the end of the interview, at the end of the coffee chat or just networking chat, whatever it was, I'd always ask them their advice. And regardless of their religious stance, they'd always give the advice of everything works out in the end. And I think coming from a school at BYU, I think we have this special perspective that not only does everything work out, but it works out because of God's hand. And it works out because God has a plan for us, and he understands like the day-to-day. He's like suffered every pain and affliction we could ever experience. So like God knows or like Jesus Christ knows what it feels like to like bomb the interview and like get those technical questions wrong. And so to answer your question, I think it's just like those students that are doing everything they can. They're in the weeds of recruiting. They're staying up late, practicing technical questions, understanding the 400 question guide in finance. Like it just comes down to having faith that like God sees you, he understands you, and he has a plan for you that's going to work out.
I totally agree. And I guess just a follow-up on that, would love to hear your thoughts about how you measure success with all these different experiences that you've had. How would you define success in your life?
Yeah, I would say that I measure success by my ability to accomplish my goals while simultaneously like experiencing and having joy. I think it's really easy on paper to write out all the different goals that we have and the different milestones we want to reach and the different internships we want to get or the different grades we want to receive. But like at the end of the day, like your ability to accomplish those things like is so contingent on like your happiness level. Like if you've accomplished all those things and you're unhappy doing it and you don't experience joy, then I wouldn't consider myself successful at all if I'm not happy, if I'm accomplishing those things. And I think the phrase joy encapsulates so much. I think it includes happiness, but it includes like staying true to your values or having a community around you or